For all of us that remember what gaming was like before there was a startup sound with your consoles, we appreciate startup sounds just that much more. And that sound that just played on the video, the best startup sound out of any of the gaming consoles so far. There's just no competition. Uh, yeah. I had the PlayStation 4 for about a year now. My lovely wife got it for me last year as a Christmas present. And I've had the chance to faddle with it, and I've had the chance to faddle with an Xbox 360, and wanted to kind of talk about the experiences that I've had between the two consoles, and just with the PlayStation 4 in general, since that's the one that, of course, we have in the house. Um, First and foremost, probably the biggest question that people are going to ask between the two of them is how do the games compare? The games are virtually indistinguishable. Yes, there are a few exclusive titles for each console, but for the most part, the game libraries have been really, really similar, and the graphics have been really, really similar. The PlayStations, as a matter of course, have always been more graphically capable than the Xbox systems have been. It's just a question of whether or not the game developers choose to exploit the power in the system. I will go ahead and say, from a graphical standpoint, that I'll give the edge to the PlayStation 4. For anybody that's ever played the Order, there's just regardless of what you think about it as a game, that's just pure graphic porn. I've never seen anything. I've never seen anything look like that before. It's beautiful. I've seen high def gameplay videos and seen people play games on the Xbox One, and nothing touches that. So I will give the edge to the PlayStation 4 in that particular arena. But other than that, the games are remarkably similar. There's none of those glaring differences like we saw with the Xbox 360 and the PlayStation 3. There were a lot of cases with those two last-gen consoles where you could clearly see a difference in video quality between the two titles. And I really don't see any of that here with the current generation of games. What I guess I will say that I have seen, especially with darker games like Arkham Knight. Okay, crap in my eye. With darker games like Arkham Knight, the PlayStation 4 seems to be a darker system. Everything just seems to be a little bit brighter, and maybe it's a contrast issue. I don't know. But when we played Arkham Knight, I had the opportunity to play it on both systems, and it just seemed a little bit brighter than it was on the PlayStation 4. Not that matters one way or the other. But, the biggest thing for me, this is the difference between the two consoles, obviously, is the console operating system. And I'm in a weird spot where the console operating system is concerned, because from an organizational standpoint, I'm familiar with it, and all things kind of have their place-ish standpoint. I'm familiar with the live tiles that are in the Xbox's operating system. There's not really been much of a change, except that there's more stuff now between the Xbox 360 and Xbox One operating systems. So the Xbone's operating system is immediately usable. The PlayStation's operating system is sort of vaguely reminiscent of the one in the PlayStation 3, vaguely, but it really is a large departure from anything that I've seen. And I've actually got a YouTube video that I'll post down there in the blog after this video, rather. Words, I has them. Yeah, it's different, and I kind of feel like it's poorly organized and it's poorly put together. You start out and every single one of your games is all the way across the top, and you've got to scroll to find anything. There's a whole other set of features. Instinctively you want to scroll down. That's that's what we want to do. That's what we've been programmed to do. So, you're at the top of the page, scroll down. But with the PlayStation 4, there's a whole other menu of stuff if you instead scroll up. You can find notifications and downloads and stuff like that, and everything isn't immediately presented to you in a really usable way. It's really, really bizarre. The UX is just not great. User experience. That's your fault, Justin. The UX it really isn't great in the PlayStation 4's operating system, and yet, my friend Christy has expressed similar sentiments. I would have the PlayStation 4's operating system every single time, and I'm not sure that I know why. The only thing that I could even begin to think is behind that decision is the fact that the Xbox One's operating system is so loud. It's so cluttered. Yes, there's a place for everything, but everything's place is right here. It's so it's loud and it's cluttered, and it's almost overbearing. Especially if you happen to have all your live tiles colored bright pink, you know who you are. It's really loud and overbearing. I know where everything is. The operating system is remarkably intuitive on the Xbox. You've got your larger menus of categories across the top, and then all of the content within each menu, right in the middle of the screen. It's not nearly as hunt and peck and gotta find it as the PlayStation is, but I find myself being remarkably grateful that I bought the PlayStation instead of the Xbox 360 because of the operating system, and I don't know why, other than the whole loudness of the thing and how cluttered it is. But that really, really is kind of an interesting thing to me, but a sentiment that I have heard other people express as well. As far as the operating system stability goes, there were a lot of folks who complained online about the stability of the Xbox One when it first came out and during its first year of life. I have never had a problem with my PlayStation 4 and have spoken to other like-minded individuals, and they haven't ever had problems with their PlayStation 4s either. And that was ultimately what made me make the decision between the two consoles in the beginning, was that I had heard so many stability-related complaints about the Xbox One that I went with the PlayStation instead. That and the fact that I was still holding out in my heart of hearts that they were going to remake Final Fantasy VII. Which it turns out that they are. And I would have held out in my heart of hearts to play the next Halo game for the Xbox One, and it turns out that was complete and utter shit. So, way to go, 343. Other things about the consoles. The controls. I do just want to touch on this very briefly. They both have, both the Xbox One and the PlayStation, both have modules. For the Xbox One, it's Kinect, and I couldn't tell you what it is for the PlayStation. But they both have modules that you can put on your television or wherever, so that you can talk to your consoles and make them do things with gestures or with voice commands. And short of those funny videos about people going, Xbox sign out, which if that just screwed anybody up, it's your own damn fault. Short of those funny videos, especially if you like to listen to your TV at any kind of reasonable volume, it really seems like the Kinect doesn't work very well. I don't have any experience with the PlayStation 1 because I didn't buy it because I don't want two little googly eyes watch me, do everything that I do. And I really don't care because, the controller is a wonderful thing and I enjoy using it. So that's a wonderful segue, actually, to talk about the controllers. I, honest to God, will give the Xbox 360 the upper hand here. I enjoy the Xbox 360's controller better than the Xbox One or the PlayStation 4. There's the Xbox 360's controller especially the newer generation ones, they just feel solid. Especially if, I don't know if it's those battery packs or what, but they just felt solid. The buttons felt good, the sticks felt good, the D-pads felt good. It just felt like a good, solid controller. The Xbox One's controller carries a lot of that solidness, whatever, forward with its controller design. I like the way that controller sits in your hand over long periods of time. If you're going to play a game for more than an hour, and I realize that there are some people rolling their eyes going, why are you sitting down and playing a game for more than an hour? Actually, you know what? None of those people are going to be watching this video, so screw you folks. For binge periods of gaming, the Xbox One's controller just sits better in your hand. The PlayStation's controller has the angle on it's just a little bit off. The ergonomics on it are just a little bit off. I had a little bit of hand and wrist discomfort, especially when I was playing through Wolfenstein for the first time. So many long sessions because killing Nazis is fun. But I've either gotten over that or I've grown new muscles and connective tissue to support the PlayStation's controller style. What I will say is it's really kind of a frustrating comparison between the two controllers because while the 360, while the Xbox One controller feels better in my hand and overall feels like a solid, quality piece of equipment, the PlayStation 4's controller feels like a toy. It feels plastic and it feels kind of cheap and it feels fragile. The buttons don't feel quite as good. They don't feel quite as good under your finger. The Xbox One encourages a good solid button press, no matter how off or on the button you might happen to be. And the PlayStation 4's buttons, especially the action buttons over on the side, the square, triangle, X, and circle buttons, you can kind of be off to the side on one of those buttons and kind of get a mushy button press. I will say a lot. From a technological standpoint, the PlayStation 4's controllers just smoke the Xbox controllers hands down. It's not even funny. I find the triggers on the PlayStation controller to be a little bit more sensitive. Obviously, the PlayStation 4 controllers have 6-axis accelerometers and stuff like that in them. And you can turn on the accelerometers and gyros and stuff, and you can turn on the ability to turn on an on-screen pointer to just use your controller like that to drive a mouse pointer around your screen if you want to. And of course, that big button in the front of the the PlayStation 4's controller is a gigantic touchpad, which lends itself to all manner of creative uses in addition to just being a big button. It's just a shame that the whole controller feels like a damn toy. I think it's cool that it's got a great big light on the front of it. I'm a child. I like bright, flashy things. It's got a great big light on the front of it, and I think it's neat that the light turns a different color depending on what player you are. I think it's really, really neat that there are some games that take advantage of that light in signifying which players who. Madden, for instance, Madden 2015. If you're playing two-player, player one might be blue, and you'll have a blue light on the front of your controller. That's not politically correct. I'm sorry. A blue light on the front of your controller, and your character will have a blue circle beneath them. And player two will have a red. Those two things link up. Just in case you forget whose controllers is who, just look at the lights. There are 4 of them. Yeah, other than that, the two systems, I've talked with my nephew about this at some length, because he ended up going with an Xbox One. And neither of us are particularly sold one way or the other on either console. The content that we have played has been pretty distributed out between the consoles. I've largely played indie games on my console. I really have kind of abused my console in that respect. Haven't bought a whole lot of AAA titles to play on it. I've just been playing indie games. And all those great indie games that I've been playing, like Fez and Limbo and Axiom Verge and Rogue Legacy, and can't think of the Fall, and all these great indie games that I've been reviewing. You can get all of these games over on the. You can get all these games over on the Xbox One as well. I think some of them may have come to the PlayStation 4 a little earlier. But the games, the titles are all out there, and the gameplay is all the same. So there's nothing outright to suggest having gotten one console over another. I'm glad that I got the PlayStation 4, and I think that if I had, knowing what I do now, the decision to make again, I would probably go and get a PlayStation 4 again. But if suddenly just right now I didn't have a PlayStation 4 anymore and had an Xbox instead, I think other than the operating system thing, which again I'm sorry, there's just something about the UX that I like better about the Xbox 4's operating system, and I couldn't tell you why. I think other than that, that's I'd still probably have the PlayStation. I really, really would. Be interested in your thoughts if you have any. Thanks for watching.